Louis XIV called it the wine of kings, the king of wines. It's been coveted by Russian czars, especially Peter the Great, and especially this guy right here. And we're talking about the wines of Tokaj in Hungary. Tokaj is the name of a region in Hungary. It's about 3 hours northeast of Budapest. Often you'll see the wines with an I at the end that's still pronounced Tokaj. It just means that they are wines from the region of Tokaj. Depending on the source, I've seen Tokaj mentioned as early as the 11th century, though some sources claim it's the 14th century. The vineyards were demarcated in the 1730s, which was a couple decades before port. Technically, maybe this is the oldest demarcated region in the world. I love the world's great sweet wines, and Tokaji Aszu takes the cake for the #1 position for me. Hundreds and hundreds of years ago, well, we didn't have all the processed sugar. We didn't have Coca-Cola. We didn't have candy. If you could have a beverage that was super sweet and it made you a little bit tipsy, no wonder people called it the wine of kings. I love to see people's faces when they say they don't love sweet wines and I give them a glass of Tokaj. Their eyes just light up. The acidity is so high thanks to the grape ferment that it washes your palate clean. It's really a unique experience. Modern Tokaj, you do make dry wines, off-dry wines, you make some late harvest wines, and then you make the wines which Tokaj is famous for, and that's the sweet wines. The different sweet wines you'll find are Szamorodnis, you'll find Tokaji Aszu, which are the flagship wines of the region. Szamorodnis, which can either be dry or sweet. The dry ones are really interesting because they can be even aged under the floor, almost like a vin jaune. You also see a slew of oddities like Fordítas, Máslás, which no longer is actually officially a wine, Aszü Eszencia, which has also been abolished, but there's still some on the shelf, and then Eszencia. Dry wine is a relatively new thing that's only existed for about the last 20 years, and while there can be some fantastic ones, producers are still trying to figure out their style. For me, the flagship wines of Tokaj are Aszü's, which are these sweet botrytized wines. We have 10 of these here today. In Tokaj, there's about 6,000 hectares. There are 6 grapes permitted. In practice, 3 are mostly used, and that's Furment, a high-acid grape. You have Húslevelű, which is also known as linden leaf, Sárga Muscatai, which is actually Muscat Petit Agran. You also have these rare grapes called Kőszörű, Zeta, and Kabar, which aren't used very often. Furment and Húslevelű are the main varieties, and of course some Sárga Muscatai to add a little bit of spice, a little bit of floral notes to the wines. Furment is great because it's a high-acid grape variety. The berries contain a lot of sugar. Therefore, if you make a dry wine, they can be a little bit higher in alcohol. Húslevelű and Sárga Muscatai are what really offers the flavors in Tokaj wines. Furment in itself is a pretty neutral variety, especially when you barrel ferment. You get a lot of the yogurt, the lees, the barrel notes. Húslevelű has like this nice ginger flavor, and of course, Muscat Petit Agran offers this yellow flower flavor, although it's not as high in acidity as Furment. The Tokaji Aszu wines are based on botrytis, a little fungus that infects the grapes, shrivels them up, they become very concentrated, therefore you have more sugar, more sweet flavors. Tokaj is a special region because they can get botrytis consistently, nearly every single vintage. Another famous region for botrytized sweet wines is Sauternes in France, although I prefer Tokaj because I like the bracing acidity. To make a Tokaji Aszu, you ferment a dry base wine. Then you pick a bunch of these little raisins. You put them in these little baskets, which are called Puttonyos. And then the number of those baskets you add to a batch of dry wine. That's where you come up with the number. In the past, you would see 3, 4, 5, 6 Puttonyos wines. Nowadays, 3 and 4 have been abolished from law. You'll still see 5 and 6. To be a Tokaji Aszu 5 Puttonyos, you need to have 120 grams a liter of residual sugar. 6 Puttonyos Tokaji Aszu, you need at least 160 grams a liter of residual sugar. However, that's in practice. Many times these wines are much sweeter than that, and of course they don't measure by Puttonyos anymore. They measure just by residual sugar. You will also see nowadays, as they're trying to simplify, wines that are just simply labeled as Tokaji Aszu without the 5 or 6 Puttonyos. If it is labeled that, you know it has at least 120 grams a liter of residual sugar. It's basically at least a 5 Puttonyos. After the wines start to re-ferment, they're put into Gonci barrels, this local 136 liter barrel. Just a side note, the production of these wines is expensive. That's why they tend to be more expensive. If you can find Szamorodni wines, which usually you can only find on the Hungarian market. Szamorodni is a Polish word which means as it grows. What they do is they take bunches that have healthy grapes and some botrytis grapes, and they just throw it in the vat and start fermenting everything together. You can make that in a dry style, like I talked about earlier, where it's aged under the floor, kind of like a vin jaune. Very hard to find these, but these wines are some of the most magical wines I think I've experienced. But you also have sweet ones. They're not quite as sweet as Aszü wines, although there are some that have the sweetness levels of Tokaji Aszu, and they're really affordable. When I'm in Hungary, I would drink Szamorodni almost every single day, because back then, several years ago, I know the cost of everything has went up recently, but you could find some excellent Szamorodnis in Hungary on the shelf from 10 to 15 euros. I used to go to Tokaj at least a few times per year. I think in total I've been there 10 times. What got me so excited about the country are all these small hidden producers, and in Tokaj especially, since Tokaj can be made in 27 villages throughout the region, there are a bunch of small producers that are maybe making a couple thousand bottles just to sell to family or to local shops or restaurants, in addition to some of the more well-known names. If you've ever read the late Paul Lukac's book, Inventing Wine, he talks about in the 18th century, when it comes to fine wine, there was really only France, Germany for its great Rieslings, especially the Mosel and the Rheingau, and Tokaj in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Hundreds and hundreds of years ago, you could even find these wines in pharmacies because many believed they had medicinal properties. Tokaj is a magnificently beautiful region. When I lived a more nomadic life, I would stay in Hungary a couple months out of the year as I was working on a Hungarian wine book. Unfortunately, I launched a Kickstarter that failed pretty publicly. I was pretty embarrassed by that, but nonetheless, I'm in love with the wines from Hungary, especially Tokaj. The region of Tokaj is this chain of volcanic mountains where also great wood for barrel coopers is found. It's almost like a check mark. You have the village of Mad, you go down to the base, that's the village of Tokaj, and then the long part of the check mark goes all the way up into Slovakia. This is a volcanic region. It's eerily beautiful because when you go out there, it's almost like a wine region lost in time. There are not many tourist facilities. It seems like you're almost on the edge of the earth because right below that and driving to it, it's the Great Hungarian Plain and the vineyards in the village of Tokaj looking over the Hungarian Plain. It's pretty spectacular. Life moves at a little bit of a slower pace there, and what's really romantic are these old cellars, which are dug into volcanic rock, and that's where most of the wines are stored as they age. Some of the vineyards you'll see Grand Cru on them. However, this is a little misleading because it was back then, they classified the vineyards by the vineyard's ability to get rot, to get botrytis. You see some of these dry wines that say Grand Cru on them, and I think that's funny because this is based on classifications hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and we all know the weather's changed. So I said Tokaj had a rich history. However, Hungary fell under a communistic period. That's when the quality of Tokaj sunk a little bit. Although I've had some wines from the communist period from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and some are still pretty darn good. The real quality revolution happened in the 90s, especially as foreign investment came in. Vega Sicilia actually owns a property there called Oremus. You'll also see a number of different foreign investment properties, which we have here today. However, some of the greatest Tokajs, in my opinion, are Hungarian families, Hungarian owned, which makes me real proud. Szepsy is one of the most famous producers. His family is actually credited with inventing the technique to make Tokaji Aszu. Dimitar Zoltan's up there with one of them, and then a slew of others. One thing I have to get on producers about is I know that sweet wines are a tough sell nowadays, even though for me that's the most magical transformation from grape to wine. But I feel like the producers in Tokaj, it's almost like I feel like they don't want to sell. Every time I go there, they have a lot of backstock of vintages. There's not really a sense of unity there. I would like them to see them travel together, travel to different places, allow people to taste these wines. Therefore, they would sell more of these wines because they're good. I know the market's tough, but to you Tokaj producers, you need to unify and get out there. I'm really proud of this video because I love Hungarian wines. I love Tokaji Aszu, and I think this is maybe one of these more comprehensive tastings, maybe even in print or definitely on YouTube that I've seen. I'm getting excited. I'm going to taste out of this Schwarzweisel glass. I really like this glass. It's a universal shape, but it's a little smaller. Going to be good for sweets, so I won't have so much. I've been to, I think, all of these producers, or maybe all of them except one, although I haven't tasted all the vintages. I know one wine's pretty new to me. Let's see which one's takes the cake. As always, I Coravin these and had somebody mix them up for me. Let's go with wine number 1. I have a feeling that I might be swallowing some of these, not only spinning. As you can see, you get this brilliant golden color with Tokaji Aszu. Now, you're going to have a lot of similar flavors. The tension, the richness is what separates the different ones. This is like pure raw honey, lemon marmalade, dried orange peel, a little bit of ginger, a little bit of white pepper. Man, this is complex. Sometimes you get a natural gas hit, kind of like you get from Semillon. This is good. This is sweet and concentrated. I would expect this to be a 6 Puttonyos. You get a lot of sugar. I generally like the ones that are 5 Puttonyos, or even like Szamorodnis, which are a little bit less sweet, because the acidity really cleans off the palate, makes the wine feel dry. This is rich, almost kind of like a maple syrupy type of texture. Oh my gosh, so lemony on the back end. That is a bomb start. Let's go to number 2. I have a lot of different vintages here because different producers release on different schedules. You can see this one right here has just quite a bit more color. This has some age on it. I love it. It's got development. It's got fall leaves and dried apricot flavors. Almost has an orange wine type of quality. This is something else. Got the forest floor type component that you'll get out of good Pinot Noir. Like old school Tokaj producers now are trying to make them fresher and fresher, maybe kind of like wine 1, because it's like what consumers, it's easier for consumers to drink. I like this style. Got some bruised apple flavors to it. Mouth coating. Almost got like a Christmas cake. You know, those Christmas cake... those Christmas fruit cake type flavors on the back end. Oh, the finish goes on and on and on. Oh, man. That was good. These wines almost have the sweetness and richness of, like, you remember Sunny Delight, this like kind of crappy manufactured orange juice drink, or even just manufactured orange juice. You have that kind of sweetness, but you have lemonade-like acidity on the back end. Man, it's good. Let's go to wine number 3. Ooh! Wine 3 has kind of like this flinty Burgundian thing going on. I haven't had this in a it literally, you got that gunflint flavor along with some dried leaves, some apricot, some mango type flavors. I haven't smelled a Tokaj like this, man. Wow. You definitely get a little bit of wood here, but it works. This is lighter, more elegant on its feet. I love the complexity here. This is one of those Tokajs that just, it feels super. It just finishes really dry. I would love to have this with some nuts, some foie gras. That's a common pairing with Tokaj, or by itself. I can drink Tokaj by itself. That is so good, man. Oh, I'm really treating myself. Let's go on to number 4. Straight up awesome wines. Number 4. Wow, I'm surprised. These Tokajs are showing, this smells a lot lighter. This smells quite floral, like it would have a lot of Chargo Muscatai or yellow muscat in it. Kind of got a dandelion flavor. It's got a savoriness to it. It's not super fruity. There is a little bit of peachness going on here. This is really floral, light on its feet, doesn't have as high acidity, but also is not as concentrated. If all of these so far were like heavy cream, this is almost like 2% milk, so a couple of steps down. It's definitely not as concentrated as the other ones, but I like the lightness of it. It's super good wine, but in comparison to all the other ones, it's not my favorite so far. Let's move on to number 5. Wine number 5. Okay, a nice another golden one. I like this glass, by the way. Natural gas. This is stereotypical sweet Tokaj to me. Natural gas mixed in with some tangerine peel, orange peel, honey. It's got some earthy notes, some smokiness to it. This is just straight up balanced. This has got it all going. This is like a party in your mouth. It's sweet. It's got some saltiness, got some mineralness. Got some lemon, some fruit flavors, got some honey, and all of a sudden your palate is washed clean. So far, this is going to be, I think this is going to be, of the tasting, like if you average all the scores, maybe the highest score tasting I've done. Man, these wines are killer. Let's move on to number 6. These wines are so delicious, but when you're tasting big flights of sugar, of wines that are high sugar, high acid, it gets tiring. I judge a lot of competitions. I judge maybe 7 to 8 a year. Doing champagne flights are super tiring, but the most tiring flight I ever did is a couple times for Hungarian magazines. I did tasting panels of Tokaji Aszu. I remember one time we went through 30 different Tokaji Aszus. You're spinning the entire time, but the sugar and I was just exhausted after that tasting. Let's move on to number 6. 6, very similar to number 5, but it has a little bit riper fruit. Stereotypical, so that same flavors. This has a little bit of a like a Jello flavor I like to it too, along with the lemon, the apricot type flavors. Oh man, this to me smells. It's not as concentrated as Eszencia. Eszencia is when you take all the botrytized berries, you put them in a tank, and the weight of it pushes down, and then you open the tap, and a couple drips come out. These wines can be 450 up to 800 grams a liter of residual sugar. They take years to ferment, sometimes only up to 2, 3, 4% of alcohol. Really magical experience. Some of the most expensive wines in the world are not made they're not super commercially viable, so a lot of producers actually make them. They keep them in a demijohn in the cellar. They give to their kids when they have colds or as medicine. It's kind of like a treat. Kind of like in Tuscany when some producers are making Vinsantos for themselves. But that's what this smells like. Constantly smells like number 5 a lot. This is, for me, the richest and most concentrated. This is powerful. I would like a little bit more of acidity here. But man, the sweetness is something. That is something else. Whew. What can I say that's good? Let's move on to number 7. What a tasting. What a tasting. Wine 7 isn't as strong, powerful. It's not on the nose as powerful. It's almost like number 4. A little bit more floral, a little bit more light on its feet. Yeah, the yellow flower come out a lot. It's also almost got this lemon drop candy type flavor too. Oh, I wonder if this is a 5 Puttonyos. This is something I think number 4 and number 7, maybe I would introduce to people for the first time because it's floral, both of them. They're a little bit lighter. They're not as powerful and rich, which can be palate fatiguing for a lot of people. Wine 8, here we go. Another dark one. Maybe has some age to it. This got a lot of fall leaves flavors. A lot of bottle patina. A lot of smoke. Some balsamic notes. This real bright tangerine flavor that you get in great orange wines. I mean, it looks like an orange wine. Look at that color. I love the tension here. Nose, you feel bottle patina. Palate, you feel nothing but lemon, fresh cut fruits, stone fruit, white peach, minerals, long finish. This is a super interesting wine. Right now, as I'm tasting it, this is, I think, going to be maybe the highest scored wine I've ever done on the channel. Oh my gosh. Let's move on to 9. Wine number 9. Definitely feel, again, all these wines with 10 of them, I gotta take it. It's almost like you're playing sports. I'm a basketball. I just got back into playing more serious again. When you go through little stretches where it's nonstop, sometimes you need to stop and take a breath. That's what I need to do here with these wines. Number 9, dried oranges. I've got kind of like a peach pie component to it. I got some fall leaves notes. Man, these wines are so complex. That's why these wines are so special. You can find so much in these wines. This definitely has like a bruised fruit character to it, which I kind of like. It's an old school Tokaj for sure. I don't think everybody's going to appreciate it. Maybe if you like some cream sherries, although it's not the same flavor. Some wines like Commanderia, Tawny Port, you're going to go more for this style. Wine number 10. 10. This looks like a modern style right off the bat. Fresh fruit, you just get a nice sense of barrel. Fresh fruit. Especially white peaches, white apricots, lemon. A little bit of flintiness. Honey. All these have some honey to a certain extent. They're so complex that some of the flavors overlap. That is powerful on the palate. Lots of richness, lots of honey flavors, along with lemon mineral finish. I think this is young, and I'd like to see this age. My goodness. Those are some awesome wines. If you want to support this channel or hang out with other fellow wine geeks, check out channel memberships. The basic membership really supports the work I do here, as I want to do some more supermarket wine type videos where I go out and buy the wines, but I need some of your help. In the second tier, the Grand Reserve tier, I do a monthly hangout where I invite people up on screen. We can share wines, talk shop. It supports the work I do here, so thank you so much. We have some bangers here, including some wines that were some of the highest scored wines I've ever had on the channel, one in particular. Let's start out with wine number 7. It was floral, more lighter on its feet. Remember I said it tastes almost like the candy lemon drops? It's lighter on its feet. Again, by itself, this wine would be tremendous. Wine is a comparison game, though, and when you're in with all these other great wines, didn't score quite as high, but it was still super good. 92 points. Light on its feet. Let's see what we got here. This is, I am surprised, the Royal Tokaj 6 Puttonyos Aszü 2017, a good year for Tokaji Aszu. This comes in at $100. If you want to find a little bit more value, you can get the 5 Puttonyos, which I really like, for like $55 in the US. In Hungary, you can get it for like 20 or 30 euros. I'm surprised that this was a little bit lighter. I recently tasted this a few months ago and thought it was quite powerful. Beautiful wine. Royal Tokaj Company is the company that the great British wine writer Hugh Johnson invested in when Hungary came out of the communist period. He invested here. He wanted to help in the revival of the region. They do great stuff. This is the wine that you're mostly going to find all around the world. I know that the shop I work at, we have some Royal Tokaj 5 and 6 Puttonyos, and I'm surprised that it was a little bit lighter on its feet, but the lemon drop flavor, it was super good. They also make the most expensive wine in the world, which is the Eszencia, which it comes in a magnum. I think that wine sold for tens of thousands of euros at auction. Eszencia wines are something special if you want to taste something unique. I thought that would be a 5 Puttonyos. I'm really surprised that it was not as concentrated. Sugar at harvest, 366 grams a liter. Residual sugar, now 189 grams a liter. I guess, I know it sounds like a lot, so it's definitely a 6 Puttonyos, but in comparison to some of these other wines that reach 200, 220, 240 grams a liter residual sugar, I guess it is a little bit on the lighter side. Remember, I said this and number 4, the next one, are great ways to introduce people to Tokaj. Number 4 is floral. The floralness stood out. It's almost like it had a lot of yellow muscat, had some peachy type notes. I gave it 92 plus points for wine number 4. Let's take a look here. Let's take a look. We have a producer that overall, I've always said, is my favorite producer in Tokaj with their overall portfolio. This is the Öreg Pince, which is the Cellars of Elizabeth. 6 Puttonyos, Tokaji Aszu 2017. This is brought in from my friends at Taste Hungry. Comes in at $69. 100% ferment, 11% alcohol. And by the way, these Tokaji Aszu wines, they come in cute 500-liter bottles with this nice Tokaj logo. This is a Hungarian family, but Heine, one of the daughters, worked in Napa, and she married a man that's a master of wine and master sommelier, Ron. He's a great guy, great palate. Their dry wines are some of my favorite in Tokaj. And for a 6 Puttonyos at $69, this is available in the U.S. Great way to get in on the style. They're a small estate. I bet you they make less than 20,000 bottles a year. I've been there twice. Oddly enough, I haven't been, Royal Tokaj is the most famous, and I've tasted a lot of wines, went to a lot of tastings, but I haven't been to the estate before, which is strange enough. I like about Öreg too is they make some of the odd Tokajs, like Fordítas, Máslás. I don't want to confuse you and go into all these terms, but these are rare Tokajs that you really can't find, and you can only get them when you go to the cellar. I really, really like their wines. Their dry wine has actually showed up on a video I did a few years ago. Let's move on to number 9, Peach Pie. Oxidized, kind of like an old school Tokaj, which I kind of like. Some people might not like those aged flavors. I personally love it. I gave it 93 points for a little bit of an old school Tokaj. Let's take a look. This is the Zsirai Tokaji Aszu 2019. I'm surprised. It's a fresher one. Comes in anywhere from 60 to 100 bucks. I couldn't find the actual price because the prices in Europe are a lot different than they are in the US. 2019. This is a small producer. Two sisters are at the helm. I've been to one of their estates before. They also have an estate in Szomló, which is an awesome barrel fermented, mineral driven white wine region in Hungary, north of Budapest. They also make a small amount of wine in Villö, which is in the south. It's probably Hungary's best known red wine region. And this is the first time I think I'm tasting their Aszü in a long time. I am a fan of their dry wines. Their dry Tokajs are exceptional. Cool label as well. Again, Hungarian owned, small producer. Really, and I like Mate, I think is the husband of one of the sisters I get along with. I saw him in Korea a few months ago, 2019. Very nice wine. Just slightly above that, 93 plus points. Had all the stereotypical flavors I wanted in Tokaji Aszu. It was the first wine, and I was so impressed right away, but I was like, wow, maybe I don't want to blow my lid too high with the scores. I thought it was very good. 93 plus points. Wine number 1. I'm really interested to see if we wind down here. This is the most expensive wine in the bunch. And they sent me the sample with the weird sample label. This is the Szepsy, which is the family that's most famous in Tokaj. A local Hungarian family. Their family's credited actually with coming up with the Tokaji Aszu technique. This is the Tokaji Aszu 6 Puttonyos 2019. This comes in at 200 bucks. I know he's also making some single vineyard Tokaji Aszus, which I've had the chance to taste next to each other, which are just simply extraordinary. This is no slouch either. And if you can't go for this, there's Szamorodni, their sweet Szamorodni. By the way, Szamorodni, if you see Saraz, it's dry. Those ones that are sometimes aged under the floor. Or Édes, those are the sweet ones. His Szamorodni Édes is just as good as a lot of other Tokaji Aszus. I haven't had this vintage of this, $200. Szepsy he's the one that's really trying to push the quality and the prices of Tokaj, so it's not seen as a cheap wine anymore. Because believe it or not, some places in Europe you can get some of these bulk Tokaji Aszu wines at really, really low prices. I don't think it helps for the image of the region. Those wines aren't as good as some of these more concentrated ones. That was good. Let's go to number 6, which was the richest. It was the most concentrated. I definitely thought that this was a 6 Puttonyos. I actually thought this was the Szepsy, because Szepsy historically is known for making the most powerful, the most concentrated Tokaji Aszu. I gave it 94 points. Usually I like the ones lighter on the feet, like this one right here, but I was liking the rich wines in this tasting. Let's take a look here. This is the Juliet Victor Tokaji Aszu 2017. This comes in at 90 bucks. Juliet Victor is a fairly brand new producer. I actually went to a tasting back in like 2018-19. It was one of their first launches of the product. I know that they have a fantastic winemaker at the helm. They're making great wines. And if you can't afford this, I don't have it here. I have it somewhere in the back. Their sweet Szamorodni is as good and as powerful as a lot of Tokaji Aszu. I think this is outstanding wine. I know it's not cheap. Comes in at 90 bucks. 2017. Good vintage for that. Juliet Victor. Really nice job. I was on a little mini press trip, and we had this rooftop restaurant in Budapest. Rooftop, in Europe, it doesn't go up very many floors. Had a really lovely woman that was pouring the wines. I was introduced to Juliet Victor for the first time. Their dry wine is actually pretty phenomenal as well. And it's funny to bump into them all these years later. 94 points, very good. Right before that, wine number 5, which I thought was a stereotypical Tokaji Aszu. I just like the flavors so much and all the tension going on in the mouth. Natural gas, honey, the tangerine peel type flavors. 95 points. 95 points. This is, my friend makes this. This is the Mad Moser MM555 Tokaji Aszu 6 Puttonyos 2013. This comes in around 100 bucks. I know that's in Europe, but they're trying to get U.S. distribution. They get the grapes from the Grand Tokaj vineyard. Grand Tokaj is the state-owned winery in Tokaj. They make some cheap Tokaj, but they also make some exceptional ones as well. 2013, this tasted a lot fresher than 2013, and that's the power of ferment. Rita, I'm really impressed. She's doing this with Len Moser, I think, believe an Austrian guy, and putting together these small projects, blending, making these really nice wines. If I was critical, I think the label needs a little bit of work, but I do think that wine was phenomenal. 95 points. All right, let me move some of these in so we can get everything in the shot here. These are some ridiculously high-scored wines. Number 2, dried leaves, dry apricot, long. I thought it actually might be this wine because this one's 2013. I can't remember if I have a wine older than that. The finish was exceptionally long. I gave it a whopping 97 points. I told you I love Tokaj. 97 points. I'm excited to see this. This is the Balassa Villö, which is the crew, the name of the vineyard. Tokaji Aszu 2013 comes in at $150. István Balassa is really active on social media, puts a lot of information up about Tokaj. Unfortunately, a lot of it's in Hungarian. I remember when I was staying there for a few months working on the last leg of my book, I was invited to this kind of underground restaurant. In Budapest, you have like these underground bars. And I went there for a tasting and we went through his whole portfolio. It was kind of unique and weird for a wine tasting. Him and I got along well. We stayed connected throughout the years. These wines, I don't think are in the U.S. yet. He actually had to send these wines to a relative in Boston, I believe, who actually forwarded them to me. Concentrated, powerful style, 10.5 alcohol, $150. But that wine was phenomenal. That length was super, super good. I know that he does have his own vineyards. I think he was making wine for some of the big guys like Demeter Zoltan, or maybe even helping with Szepsy in the past. I can't remember exactly. I know my local friends say that he is highly regarded as one of the best Aszü producers. His wines always do super well in blind tastings. Okay, wine number 10, 97 plus points. Had more fresh fruit flavors, more lemon, more mineral type notes, kind of like that new school modern Tokaj that a lot of people are going to appreciate. Gave it 97 plus points. 97 plus points. This is a great wine. I've had it in the past. This is the Barta Öreg Dülö in Mad. So this is the Old King's Vineyard, one of the Grand Crus of Tokaj. 6 Puttonyos Tokaji Aszu 2019. I haven't had the current release of this. This comes in at $100. They make great Aszü, but they make one of my favorite dry Tokaj wines. A woman is there at the helm. I can't remember her name. Historically, this has always been good. Every time I've had this wine, it showed super well. Besides Royal Tokaj Company, a lot of these other ones you have to kind of track down. I know the Öreg is also available for my friends at Taste Hungary. But when you're in Europe, you can get these wines, and that's one wine I just say track down. It's consistent every single vintage, that I've had it at least. Okay, the next two. Number 3. It was flinty, almost white burgundy-esque. Remember, I put my nose in the glass and I was completely shocked. I don't think I've ever had a Tokaji Aszu smell like that. So I don't know what it is. I like the freshness. 98 points. Length, beautiful. 98 points. Let's take a look. I have no idea what this is. This is the Hétszölö Tokaji Aszu 5 Puttonyos 2017. This comes in at $60. This shares ownership with the same owner of Cos d'Estornel, the great second growth in Bordeaux. They are converted to become a biodynamic producer. They have an amazing vineyard right in the village of Tokaj. It says Tokaj right in the vineyard. I've been up in the vineyard before. It's spectacular. You look over the great Hungarian plain. I remember when I was there, it was during harvest, and we tasted fresh Eszencia from the vat. Remember I said the bochatized berries, that all the pressure comes down. You open up the tap and you taste it. I am shocked. This wine received a gold medal at Mundus Vini, a competition that I judge at twice a year. Some of their earlier wines I felt were not that great, were sometimes oxidized, especially the dry ones. I've noticed they've gotten better and better and better every time I've tasted them. And to be white burgundy-esque, $60. 98 points. That's phenomenal. The last wine. This is the highest scored wine I've done on the channel. While I started YouTube back in 2015, I was also writing. I was writing more seriously up until around 2020, 2021-ish. And I think the highest scored dry wine I ever gave was also 99 points. You know, Not that scores are an end-all be-all. It's a snapshot of a moment in time. It's just a reference how the wine's showing that time, how you are showing, how your mind's showing at that time. But on this channel, I know for sure that this is the highest scored wine I've ever done. It had orange wine-like characteristics, had some of those aged notes on the nose, and then remember on the palate, it was just fresh all the way. 99 points. This is the Beres Tokaji Aszu 5 Puttonyos, 2011. This comes in at $59, 70% Formant, 30% Hárslevelu. Also brought in by my friends at Taste Hungary. I actually visited this estate many years ago. Not with the owner. It was kind of a generic tourist visit. I was not that impressed with their dry wines, but their sweet wines, I thought... When I visited, actually, you know what? The first time I visited, they had not released their Aszü wines yet. They had just released their sweet Szamorodni. So maybe this is the first time I'm tasting their Aszü. My goodness. 2000, so they hold it back quite a bit. I know this Hungarian owned, $59, 99 points. I think that is outstanding. Whew. There were some other producers here I wanted to include, like Oremus, which is owned by Vega Sicilia, like Disnoku, which is owned by the AXA Group in France, Demeter Zoltan. I just couldn't get a hold of them to get samples. It's a problem sometimes working with Hungarian producers. But tell me, have you tasted Tokaji Aszu before? Do you love it as much as I do? Or if you haven't tried it yet, maybe it's time to get on the bandwagon. And I'll see you at the next episode.